right, we've got some news involving the Detroit Lions. Look, we all know the Lions for the better part of a year plus now have been making a lot of smart moves, certainly in terms of roster structure and design. Credit to the GM Holmes there. Certainly in terms of offensive play calling, although the defense led by Aaron Glenn is getting around as well. But a lot of credit is due to Dan Campbell, and he gets a lot of credit, but not just in terms of his leadership style, but his actual management of the day-to-day, the week-to-week, in terms of keeping players in positions to be successful for the long term. And we've got a report from Sports Illustrated highlighting just that. Mice, if you throw it up, I will read from it. For Detroit Lions wide receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown, missing the team's game against the Carolina Panthers provided the talented wideout an opportunity to observe the team from a different vantage point. While Lions head coach Dan Campbell expressed it was challenging to inform the third-year wideout he would not be playing, all parties involved felt it was the correct decision, especially given the fact it was a long season and the team had additional depth at multiple different positions. I'm really thankful that they did, because at the end of the day, you never really know what certain injuries, what can progress throughout the game, if you play or if you don't, said St. Brown. So I hate missing games. If I can, I wouldn't miss a game ever if I could. But at the end of the day, the team must make a decision about what's best for me and the team. And that was for me to not play last week. All right, I think this is really important to understand, because you look at any team, when any team is focused just on a week to week, or better yet, on just a yearly focus, they're all in on a single season, a lot of things can go wrong. A great example of this is the New York Jets with Aaron Rodgers. They went all in, pushed all the chips in for the Jets. 2023, Aaron Rodgers gets hurt. It completely falls apart. The Lions under Dan Campbell and under Holmes, everything has been focused on the long term. Amon-Ra St. Brown is banged up for a little bit. Listen, take a game off. Look, I know every game in the NFL is competitive and tough, even though the Lions blew up the Panthers, but focus on the long term. It's more important for Amon-Ra St. Brown to be a star receiver, not just for 1 week or 2 weeks, but for years for the Detroit Lions. Have a long-term focus. And that's why I think what we're seeing from Detroit so far this season, this isn't going to continue just for the month of October or the month of November or just for 2023. They've set themselves up for success in 2024 and 2025 just by having the right mindset. Long-term thinking works out in the NFL. Short-term thinking, every once in a while, you'll have a great year, but it can fall apart very quickly. There's a lot of warning signs for that. And credit for Dan Campbell, because he's been sticking to this from day one. He focuses on the long term, and we're going to see the results from the Lions, not just this weekend, not just the rest of the year, but for years to come. Miles, I'm curious what your thoughts are, what Dan Campbell's moves with the Lions are, especially heading into a big matchup. But that leads me directly to my question today for you Lions fans to answer, as always, in the comment section below. Look, who would have thought this would be a big game prior to the season? But we got Buccaneers, Detroit. Both teams won loss. Both teams look like top contenders in the NFC. Let us know in the comment section below your prediction, final score, Lions, Buccaneers. But Miles, let me throw it over to you now. What are your thoughts on this move by the Detroit Lions, just everything they're doing right now to set themselves up for the long term?
Yeah, Nick, I think it's a really smart move here, and we see what they're doing. The Lions realize the gravity of the situation, especially with a player like Amon-Ra St. Brown. And at the end of the day, Nick, a game is a game. One loss or one win, doesn't matter who it's to, is going to count the same on the record books, whether it was the Chiefs, whether it was the Panthers, whether, it was Green Bay Packers. It doesn't matter who it was. So I think them resting Amon-Ra St. Brown was the best decision for the team, and it doesn't matter what the situation was. Because some people will say, well, they did it because they didn't need him to beat the Panthers. They would have beat the Panthers handily without him anyways. I don't care if it was versus the Panthers. I don't care if it's at the end of the season, make or break versus the Vikings. This is a decision that I think that the Lions are making 10 times out of 10 because they realize how important Amon-Ra St. Brown is, and they realize that this guy's health is bar none more important than one game that he can contribute to. Because, like you said, you don't build a team if you're smart based on one player. You don't have one superstar to where if they're out, your season's tanked. You look at, like you said, the Jets with Aaron Rodgers. You see that? Boom. The Jets, Aaron Rodgers goes down. No one's expecting the Jets to do anything anymore. There are no expectations. Famously, the Broncos all in on Russell Wilson. They try to get that trade. We all see how that turned out. Russell Wilson didn't pan out. He didn't get injured. He just didn't pan out. Now they have been bad for the better part of 2 years now, and everyone's wondering what's going to happen in that situation. With Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's a very good player, but the Lions don't need him every single game. They can afford, through smart roster construction, to let him sit out and get healthy so he is the most effective all the time. They don't have to let him sit in like Joe Burrow and play hurt for a few games and be down and kind of, be his worst self for a few games rather than let him take a game off and come back and be 100%. I love what the Lions are doing. I love what Dan Campbell and the front office are doing. And I just like the decisions all around the ball that the Lions are making because it shows this is a very well constructed team who has some very bright people running it.
And I do want to highlight here an important fact. Even if they absolutely needed Amon-Ra St. Brown, to win the game, even if they went into it, and, again, every game is usually close in the NFL. It didn't turn out that way against Carolina, but he's obviously going to be a big part of any game plan. So removing him off the chessboard certainly hurt their offensive strategy going into the game. But even then, they still made the right decision to don't rush him. Here's where it also will play a big impact. A lot of these players understand that injuries can hurt their long-term value when it comes to free agent deals, long-term deals, things like that, especially guys at the running back, wide receiver, tight end positions. A great way to get a great interaction between the player and the front office and the coaching staff is to make sure the player doesn't hurt himself more. That gives a lot of good energies between both parties. Good example of this in the past where it went horrifically wrong was with Calvin Johnson, the Detroit Lions, right? Obviously, Calvin Johnson played hurt a few times. He held that against Detroit. In fact, going back to the Barry Sanders era, that was one of his many complaints with the Lions organization. You're seeing it with Dan Campbell now. This is one of the benefits of having a former player. He recognizes and understands a lot of what's in these players' heads. He says, listen, I'm not going to rush Amon-Ra St. Brown right now, back in the game, banged up. He re-aggravates the injury, and suddenly his earning potential goes down in the future. Because these are guys that are trying to make the most they can for their families, just like anybody else. So he understands that and says, listen, we'll sit you. We know your competitive instinct. You want to play, but trust us. This is right for the long term. And I guarantee you, Amon-Ra St. Brown, when he thinks with his rational brain, it's like, yeah, I don't want to re-aggravate this injury and potentially hurt my team in the long term and also hurt my potential earning power in the long term. And I guarantee you, every other potential free agent around the NFL, they see things like that. And they're like, okay, I'm going to play for the Lions, right? Even beyond being a winner, they want to sit there and go, okay, if I go to Detroit, I know the coaching staff and I know the front office, they're going to look out for my interest just as much as they're going to look out for the team's interest. And that will benefit them greatly, again, long-term next offseason and beyond as they look to continually build a roster. This is why one of the many reasons why the Chiefs continue to get quality veterans to come in for short-term deals. The Chiefs are known for resting players that are banged up. They did it with Travis Kelce to start the year, as Lions fans well aware. They've done it with other players multiple times. This is why veterans want to go to Kansas City, not just because of the winning, because they know the coaching staff will look out for them as well. No matter how you look at it, whether it's focusing on the long term, making sure Amon-Ra St. Brown is healthy for the rest of the year and beyond, but also making sure that you develop a good relationship with the players. This was a great move by Dan Campbell. People aren't paying attention to this, but I think this may have been the smartest move Dan Campbell has made so far this entire season.